Welcome everybody. This session is, or this, this session is going to be talking about demoing games for a variety of audiences, and let's just get right into it. So first off, we will talk about what it is that we're going to be talking about today. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. So today's topics and the goals for it. First, we're going to be talking about a little bit of what my credentials are, and talk a little bit about Bonus Round itself and how we pitch games and demo games on a daily basis to people. Next up, we'll be talking about setting your goals for wherever you are that you're demoing games. And every different setting is going to be a little bit different. What your goals might be should be changing accordingly to that. Talk about reading the room, kind of more of the social interactions while you're demoing games, and as well as best practices, a little bit more of what supplies are good to have handy, what preparations you can make, helping manage staff, whatnot, stuff like that. So let's kind of dive in and talk a little bit myself here for a second as I can get my slideshow to work. There it goes. Hey, that's me. So yeah, about me and a little bit about Bonus Round as well. My name is Drew Lovell. I am one of the co-owners of Bonus Round Cafe located in Chicago. We have been open for about 4 years now. And so what do I do and what does the cafe do? Well, we're a board game cafe first and foremost. We also do retail, but really what our bread and butter is that we do, we're a full service restaurant. And in addition to being a restaurant, we have a library currently of about 400 games. It used to be probably closer to 700, but we had to move around our floor plan with the pandemic and all. So right now, what we have available in the library is about 400 games. And our staff, in addition to bringing out food and waiting on tables and pouring drinks and everything, our staff are trained to teach games, pitch games to customers. We have customers who have never played games before, or they're very familiar with games. It kind of runs the whole spectrum. And our staff are trained on how to teach them to people quickly and effectively while they're waiting tables and doing all other kinds of things. We teach a wide variety of games on a daily basis. And one of our strengths as a business is just being really effective and efficient at that. Teaching games and demoing games is a different skill set. And we're mostly going to be talking about demoing games here, which is probably more applicable to the publisher and designer side of the industry rather than what we do. But there's a lot of crossover between those two skill sets, and I'll kind of differentiate the two of those. That being the case, let me see if it's the next slide or if it's this one. Yeah, so how does Bonus Round pitch games? Normally, when we are showing off games at the cafe, you've settled in with your friends, you've come in, whether it's just 2 of you or 4 of you or a larger group. Is usually the case. And if that's the case, we'll get a couple brief kind of lead-in questions on what you might be in the mood for. And then from there, we're going to bring over 3 games, usually try to bring over a variety of games so that we're not getting kind of too much overlap between all of them. So maybe a cooperative one, a competitive one, and a social game or a party game. Maybe stuff that is really easy to learn and then stuff that is crunchy. So you're getting kind of a wide spectrum of things. That way, everybody who's interested in something is getting the opportunity there. I'm going to double check one thing on my screen. Yep, cool. So we'll bring over 3 games. We'll let you, we'll bring over 3 games. And with those 3, we're going to give a brief description of each one, kind of what the most exciting bits about it are that might get somebody interested in it. Kind of the thematics, the story. We're not really talking about rules or mechanics at that point, but mostly what it is, the elevator pitch of the games. With that being the case, we, from there, narrow it down. We let the customers choose what they're in the mood to play. And after another minute or so, somebody's going to come back and teach them. With the teach, we try to keep that under about 10 minutes, depending on the game. That's probably for some of the longer games, it would take about 10 minutes. If you're talking like Wingspan, Ticket to Ride sometimes takes a little while to teach. But a lot of the games probably are closer to 5. And in that time, we're also bringing out drinks. We're making food. We're greeting other tables at the door and taking orders, doing a whole lot all at once. So it's not just demoing games. It's not just pitching and teaching all at once. It's a lot of other things in there as well. But that's kind of what we do, and we do it a lot. On any given day, I'm probably teaching 30 or 40 games, and they're all different games and switching gears very quickly. All right. My slideshow will work. There it goes. Hey. So yeah, let's talk a little about settings and what your goals might be for any given show. And that's important to do right up front because, again, they're not going to be the same between different atmospheres. So where and who are you demoing games to? And might be a trade show, might be more within industry folks, whether it's at GAMA, Distro Open House. It might even be like Proto Spiel or something like that, where you're trying to show off games that you are currently prototyping and working on. It might be a consumer convention, something more forward-facing like Origins, Gen Con, or Essen, where you're working with the general populace and kind of consumers, everybody who's excited to come see your games, play them. It might be at a local festival. It might be, you might be sandwiched between somebody selling arts and crafts and somebody selling pulled pork sandwiches or something. You might be out in public and you might be the only thing that is game related, but you're still out there trying to spread the message, get your game shown off, maybe sell some. And you might even be on television or on a web show or something like that. Probably won't be talking too much about television web show stuff. I'm probably not the best speaker on that type of demoing, but it is something still to consider when you're setting up your goals, at least for the sake of this session. So your broad goals, they might be sell product that you brought with you. They might be establishing new accounts if you're at a trade show or something like that. They might be building word of mouth or building buzz. That would be especially applicable to the television or web show or the local festival style thing. It might also be applicable at Gen Con. Maybe your games are still shipping overseas and you're just trying to get people excited about them to come out in the next 3 months. And then are you showing off a new or upcoming product? So all those are important to kind of distinguish. The idea there being that if you're selling product that you brought with you, you might be keeping your demos short and sweet because you're just trying to move on through people, getting higher volume of demos going and higher volumes of teaches so that you can churn through people and hopefully move through some product. If you are trying to establish new accounts, there might be more small talk and just getting to know each other. If you're talking with another retailer or another distributor or publisher or something like that and trying to build kind of more networking things, the teach and pitch of the game might be secondary. That being said, another thing I would say to pay close attention to is what sort of atmosphere is it that you're going to be pitching, teaching, demoing games in? Is it on the trade show floor at GAMA? Is it going to be on the convention floor at Origins? Or is this after hours? Are you gathering at a bar where there's going to be a bunch of other people also demoing games? Are you at kind of the retailer night at GAMA? And that atmosphere is going to also dictate how you should be demoing games. In this case, if, I think it's important to mention, is alcohol being consumed while you're in this after hours event? And if that's the case, do you have standards that staff are expected to adhere to? Do they have a drink limit? Are they allowed to drink after they're done demoing or while they're demoing? These are going to be factors. It can be something that if it's not addressed up front with staff, and when I say up front, I mean like day of, week of kind of thing, rather than, oh yeah, we talked about it a year ago. These are what our standards are. It might not be top of mind for them if they're just thinking that it's time for them to relax. On the same thing for the atmosphere in an after hours event is your staff might think that this is still time where they're focused on demoing and really showing stuff off and they're in selling mode, but the audience is in more relaxed mode, especially if they've been at a show all day long. They might be fairly exhausted, and that might not be what they're mentally signed up for. On the flip side, you might have people that are really interested in sitting down and having a more in-depth discussion on the game, that's what they think they're there for. And the staff for them, it's a relaxing night. It's a way to blow off some steam at the end of the show. That goes back into your broad goals. Is some of these events afterwards might just be ways for your staff to network and whatnot, but you should be clear with yourself and with them whether that's the case or if they're actually still kind of on the clock. If they're still, working in a professional manner of showing off the games, or if they're a little bit more social. So that's some of setting your goals, and being able to set your goals is going to go into how you're going to want to demo the games. If you're trying to go very quickly, if you're trying to put yourself in front of a lot of people and increase the volume of your demos, you're going to want to make sure that it's really tight. If you're trying to, slow things down a little bit, maybe there's more room to socialize on that one. All right. So as far as preparation goes, some of these are important. It's more the physical stuff, the stuff that you can do ahead of time to make sure that the day of is going a lot smoother for you. Have your booth set up efficiently and make sure that you have all the tools that you need. So a couple of things that you can do that are going to save you a lot of time the day of when you're demoing and teaching games are having a QR code for your email list or for your company's contact information, or even a sell sheet QR code. Having stuff that somebody walking by can quickly scan, business cards or handouts, something that they can scan with their phone and email to themselves, or scan, enter their email address, and you can email them to follow up later. It's going to save you a lot of time of writing down emails, asking people for them, and everything else. So you can kind of cut to the chase of doing what you're really there for. Making sure that your signage is not only, pretty easy to read from 5 feet away, but it's also placed somewhere in your booth that people can see over, shoulders. If there's somebody walking by and they're not able to see your signage because it's too low, that's not helping you and it's not helping them. As far as order sheets go, if you are trying to sell at the show to retailers, but not product that you brought with you, obviously having order sheets handy is really helpful. Not all retailers want them, but some do. I kind of like them myself, but I know a lot of retailers would rather just follow up with you after the show. They already know what they're doing and they're kind of have their own system. If you're selling on premises, having point of sale ready and making sure it's near at hand is going to be important. On that note, making sure that whoever's running it is familiar with it and that there's more than one person familiar with it. If that one person goes on lunch break, you are still covered on being able to ring up sales. That's especially important for smaller publishers or smaller designers who are self-publishing, where there might only be 2 people working your booth or whatnot, right? And then having a backup plan if your internet fails is important. What are you doing to ensure that you're going to still be able to do what you were there for if you suddenly lose internet access? I know most of these shows are pretty good, but every once in a while there's a horror story. But that also goes for kind of being at a street fest or something. That's a little bit more likely there maybe. So many of these are obvious, but are you actually putting thought into them? Are you debriefing with your team afterwards on what didn't work, what could have worked better, and where some of the friction points are? Over time, you're going to realize that you can kind of hone things down a little bit and make it a lot smoother. All right, so that's kind of preparation. Hopefully we'll start moving into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of actual demoing here. Oh, I do have some more prep. And this actually goes into some of the demoing. So have staff learn and hone the 30-second and the 5 to 10 minute pitch demo rather than the full game. In a lot of cases, whether it's consumer or retailer facing, the people that you're talking about your game to are not going to be as excited about your game as you are. And that's just because they're seeing a lot of other stuff that day. They're kind of not on the clock per se, and they have a lot of other plans. So they might just be stopping by and when they're asking you to show off their game, you might want to show off the whole game, and it might be an hour long. But that might not be what they wanted to get roped into. They might have other plans, and now you're creating a negative experience that might actually be losing you a sale and occupying a bunch of your time. So when is a full play necessary? I personally think very rarely. There are some people that are going to want to see a full play of a game. I think that's more appropriate for like an after hours event. Obviously, not on the show floor, especially if it's a longer game, upwards of an hour. If it's a party game that you can knock out in 5 minutes, yeah, show them the whole game. But if it's anything that's going to take a while to teach, they're going to be sitting there for a while before they even get to take their first turn. That being said, you can really slim that down and make it a little bit more approachable if it is a longer game. We'll talk a little bit about that. But having your staff learn and hone the 30-second pitch is really important. Being able to have whatever your game is and be able to quickly just from memory recite details about it, say what the exciting story touch points are, and get other people excited about it is going to go a really long way. And that's where I would say that 30-second pitch is probably the most important part. If you're not excited about the game while you're pitching, neither is the person you're pitching to. They're just not going to, it's not going to follow through there, right? But it should be something short and sweet. I'm trying to think of an example without having a game here in front of me, but I know I pitch Santorini all the time at the cafe, right? And Santorini, if I had the box, I would be able to point to it and say, this is Santorini. It's a game a lot like chess or checkers. It has a Greek mythological theme to it. You're going to be moving around your people on this island, building up these towers. If you get one of your people to the third floor, you immediately win the game. And that was just on the spot, kind of spontaneously here. So I wasn't quite as excited about it. But, having that in your head from memory is going to go a long way. And keeping it really short and sweet, not going too much into the details. So the staff should be well-versed in all the products that they're in close proximity to. Sure, they might be the one that's demoing Ticket to Ride or something else all day long, but there's going to be a time where somebody else is on lunch break and you are standing there and somebody asks you a question about a game that you don't know about. Well, the answer is you should know something about it if you're working in close proximity to it, because that's going to happen. So you should be able to talk about multiple games, hopefully pitch multiple games. Even if you can only demo one of them, you can still talk to people about them, because that 30-second pitch is a lot more important than a 5 or 10-minute demo. So a couple more things on this is best practices for like social cues and keeping an eye out for things is comes back to, when is that full play necessary? Well, if you're showing off a game and it is an hour long, the thing there is that your attention is going to be on that game. I would imagine. Well, at bonus round, we're teaching a game and then we walk away and we have no more interaction with that table unless they're ordering more food or they need a clarification on the rule. But they might be playing that game for 90 minutes without our assistance. I think it's pretty common in a lot of these game convention settings that the staff are there kind of overseeing everybody that's playing. They might even be playing alongside them. Honestly, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, it might not be the best idea to have staff actually playing the game with other people, because now their attention is on the game rather than on being able to greet other people that might be coming through the booth and whatnot. That's if you're doing a full play. I think if you're doing a demo and keeping it 5 or 10 minutes, sure, you can have them there the whole time because they're going to be talking and interacting the whole time. But if it's not really necessary for them to, and you are doing full plays of a game, even if it's in an after hours event, that person who could have taught the game and then stood up and talked to other people that are walking by and expressing interest, you're going to need a second or third person to be able to interact with people that are walking by. And what I was getting at there is be very cognizant of the people that you're not engaged with. there's people that are coming by your booth and they haven't been acknowledged. And if they haven't been acknowledged within the first 15, 30 seconds of them walking by, you might have already lost them. If you're too busy demoing a game or talking to somebody else, even just to say, hi, I'll be right with you in a second, they might go elsewhere because they might not think you have the time. It's something to be very cognizant of. I'm trying to look at the panel here to see if I skipped past anything. I don't think we did too much. Can maybe circle back. Knowing, not only practicing the demo with people and the honing the 30-second pitch, but really practicing greeting people. It sounds silly at first, but honestly, that's a really good use of your time of role playing. One of you is working the booth and one of you is an interested third party that's walking by. And how are you greeting them? Unfortunately, I would say there's a lot of times where that ball is dropped. So is it just, hey, do you want to come see our game? It'll take 5 minutes to learn. Or, hey, we're about to just start this demo. You want to join in? We got one more seat. That can go a long way if you're trying to get them engaged with the game. But even just hey, how's your show going? Have you seen anything good? Or, hey, what brings you by? Are you familiar with our product? That's a really great question to be asking because it already provides a whole bunch of useful information for you on the "Are you familiar with us?" front. All right, so moving on. Reading the room. Establish when somebody walks up to your booth, establish what that person is here for. And you're going to have a long day, potentially 8 hours, 10 hours long of you talking about your game nonstop. It's easy to get caught up in the moment of kind of following a script. I know I do sometimes at the cafe, but being able to take a step back from that and say, each person that comes up has unique needs and unique interests, and they might not be familiar with you at all, is really important. So establishing what they have come to your booth for right at the very beginning is really great. And that's why I say having a question like, hey, how's it going? Are you familiar with our product? Or, hey, how's it going? Are you familiar with our company? Or have you seen this new game that we have? These are all great kind of icebreakers because you're asking them to engage and they're telling you what they're there for. If they're just there to stop by and learn about a bunch of your games, but they only have 5 minutes, don't spend 5 minutes talking about the same game. They want to see a bunch of different things. And there's definitely been times where somebody got carried away in the moment for me. And I missed the opportunity to see other products from you that I wanted to see. There's beeping in the background. I think coffee is done brewing. I could use some. All right. But where was I? So we were talking about establishing what it is that they're there for and really making sure that you and anybody you're working with at your booth is actively listening to what their response is. So where are we here? Are they familiar with your company and brand? Talked about that a little bit. You aren't the only exciting thing in the room. I already talked about that a little bit earlier, but it's worth reinforcement here, is to make sure that you are slowing down. If you're excited to have somebody there with you, you are slowing down and making sure you're giving these people the time to kind of process information. Their brain might be working a little bit slower after having learned a whole bunch of very complex games or something. And you got to put yourself in their shoes for a moment. That being the case, when we're talking about demoing, slowing down the demo so that they're able to process information there is important. So don't try to show them too much. That also has another positive to it, is you want them to leave your booth or your table thinking that there's more cool things to discover in that game. You kind of want to insert that brain worm into their head so that they're constantly thinking about it. And even if they don't buy it right away, they're going to be buying it later. They're going to be telling other people about it. And they have kind of that inkling of, I think there was more to explore there. That's going to be giving them something to think and talk to their friends about. and that's important. So on the right here, being personable, and being outgoing, asking people where they're from, where they're visiting from, how their show is going. All of that is going to make you feel more approachable. And the more approachable you're feeling, or other people feel you are, the more likely they are going to be coming up and talking to you and have a positive experience. On that same one, don't gatekeep your game. You might have a family game and it's a bunch of adults who've come over, and you're like, oh, well, this game's for kids, right? That's just an easy off the top example. You're already telling them, oh, this game's not for you, right? Don't do that. And I can think of a million other situations where that happens. Another egregious one is if your game is really complex, and it's like a heavy duty 3-hour Euro game, just judging people of like, oh, have you played games like this before? Or making statements like that might not be the most helpful thing for you. You might be driving people away even though you don't mean to. They might not have played this game before, but your game might be the first time that they're playing one of these heavy, long, involved games, and it might be the thing that they're really excited for. And your game, they might have already seen. They just want you to show it off to them so that they can understand it better, because this might be the entry to them playing those types of games. And how awesome would it be if that was your game that did that? So really be careful on the kind of nuanced statements you're making, that and how they might come across. So yeah, don't gatekeep your game. That actually goes back to bonus round, right? We have games that I'm thinking I've had people come in where the last time they've played games was Monopoly 5 years ago with their family on Thanksgiving or something, but they came in the cafe and this was their first time playing modern board games, and they wanted me to teach them Furia Dracula or something that was fairly involved in a long game. And you know what? That's awesome. They chose for us to do that, rather than them try to fuss through the rule book on their own or something. Speaking of vampires, don't be a time vampire, and don't let them be one to you. So this goes both ways. It's why it's important to practice your greeting with people and practice your exit strategy with people. When you have people approaching your booth, making sure that you understand how much time they have. You don't need to specifically ask them. A lot of this communication is through nonverbal cues and whatnot. You can get a pretty good idea of how much time they have. But you know what? The easy way to do it is say, hey, I'm going to give you the 30-second pitch of my game. And then just go ahead and give it to them, right? Or, you don't have to be that specific. It could be just something like, hey, I'm going to pitch this, or I'm going to tell you a little bit about this game. And after you're done telling them about it, hopefully they're excited. Then it's an easy opportunity for you to go, hey, did you want to learn more about this? I can show you some of the rules. And assuming you have it set up there right in front of you, you can quickly do so. You tell them a little bit about the rules. Maybe that takes you 2 or 3 minutes. At that point, you can ask them, did you want to play a turn, or have you seen enough? All these are good questions. Constantly being kind of hitting the reset button on whether this person wants to continue spending time there is important. So you don't want to be occupying more of their time than they have to give you. But if you do your job well and you pitch it really well, or you explain the rules really well, you might find that you do have more time with them than they were planning on giving you. And that's a great sign. That's a sign that you've probably made the sale, for lack of a better term, right? On the flip side, don't let them be a time vampire for you. They might be lingering around, and you might have 5 other people waiting in line that want to talk to you, whether it's briefly or at length. And those other 5 people are being ignored if one person is really kind of capitalizing your time unnecessarily. And so that's where practicing kind of the exit with people of whether it's, hey, right over here, you can scan this QR code and we'll enter you to our email address. Or handing them a business card and just physically acknowledging the next person in line or whatnot can go a long way. But practicing that's important because not everybody has an easy time doing so. So how much time do you need? If you already, and that actually goes into the time vampire part, if you already made the sale, don't blow it. if you're there at a like a consumer facing show and you're trying to show off your game, uh, and the person is already clearly excited about it, they might be ready to buy it then. But spending another 15 minutes, they might change their mind. And also, if you're spending another 15 minutes talking to them about this and that, or showing off another, part that you think is interesting in the game, well, there might have been 5 other people that would have bought the game in that time as well. So really just kind of keeping it short and sweet. And I realized that I left something off earlier in the presentation, but we'll come back to that in a second on the short and sweet thing. So hopefully I will remember on this how much time you need, because this is really where we start getting into the nuts and bolts. So missed opportunities. Don't just focus on the person in front of you. Who else might you be missing out on? I think I've already talked about that a fair bit, so we'll keep on going. And now we're going to just talk about best practices, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. What I should say up front is, again, I think I have my email at the very end of this. If you have questions about practices with demoing your game, you're not really sure how to slim it down and everything, definitely reach out to me. And before I even start talking about kind of my list here that I have on the screen, these last 2 slides were thrown together kind of quickly. I'm going to just talk a little bit about my philosophy on pitching and teaching and demoing games. Some of it is more applicable to the cafe, but honestly, I think it goes across the board, whatever setting you're in. So I should look up whoever this is. Maybe it's a bunch of people who've said this at some point, but I've heard talks from stand-up comedians where they'll talk about, I'm doing a 10-minute set, and in my 10-minute set, I was able to get the crowd to laugh 3 times. And I consider that a success as a new budding comedian, right? But as I'm trying to become a better and better comedian, I'm trying to shorten that time and get more laughs. So next time I go on stage, I'm trying to get those same 3 laughs in 8 minutes, or even better yet, in 8 minutes, I'm trying to get 4 laughs in. And the next time I'm trying to get 5 laughs in 5 minutes, right? And so you're trying to slim down. I take that the same approach when it comes to pitching and teaching games. So when you're pitching and teaching games, you might have stumbled through it the first couple times because you were only a little bit familiar with the game, and you were a little bit nervous, and you were kind of testing out a new approach maybe that you were that you had thought of on how to teach it. I'm going to take a quick sip of my coffee here. So you might be testing out something new, but the more you do this in front of a variety of people, the more honed in you're going to get, and the better you're going to get at selling your games. With that being the case, the real important part is practicing with a variety of people. And the only way to really do that is to not practice, to do it, at a show and whatnot, is to have a variety of different people that you're teaching the games to, because everybody learns in a different way. And your method of teaching might not be working for specific people. If you're starting to realize that people are interrupting you with questions on how something works frequently, chances are that the order in which you're teaching the rules could use some adjustment. I'm going to talk about that actually specifically. I'll probably interrupt on some of these best practices and talk about specific teaching things, because I don't think I actually made a slide for that, despite me meaning to. But first, best practices, I talked about this earlier, is first start with the pitch. Be able to describe your game in 30 seconds. I know I've talked about that a lot, but it is really important. Then switching to demo and teach. There might even be a intermediary step where you're just talking about what the core game mechanics are. And that's actually something I know I've had happen to me. I'm going up to a booth. I just want to know what the bare bones stuff is to know if it's a fit for my store or for the cafe. And I just want to know what the core game mechanics are and what the playtime is, maybe. And I ask you, but then I get, a 10-minute answer, and I still am not sure on what the answer to my question was somewhere in there. I got lost, right? Really listening to what it is that people are asking you is going to go a long way to saving you time, saving them time. giving them a better experience and probably ensuring that they're actually going to buy your game if they are interested. So being able to quickly describe that stuff, then be able to do a demo in the teach, and if necessary, a full play. And again, I don't think a full play of your game is necessary outside of a few specific instances. Listen to what the person is asking for. If they I already talked about that part just now. If they just want core mechanics or they want to know what the playtime is, tell them that, and then see if they want more. Know what you're going to say beforehand and practice. This goes a long way. Making sure that you have experience setting up the game, even taking out of the box and whatnot. And speaking of setup, have the game already set up when people come. I think most people have gotten pretty good at this as far as demoing goes, and having the game out and ready to be seen. All these games are looking a lot prettier in the last 10 years, and being tactile and more approachable and looking good on the table is very important for getting people to approach your table and making sure it's set up in a good way. With that being said, I would heavily consider, especially for longer strategy games, to have the board already set up in a pre-established board state, more or less, right? Help you get to the fun part of the game, the most exciting moments, the part where you can see in the other person's head that the wheels in their head are turning finally. Setting up the board so you're at the moment before that starts happening, and that way you can show them the options of play this card and this is going to happen, or play that card and that's going to happen. Probably play with hands face up on the table. That's going to be easier for you to point to things, so long as it's still readable at height for the person. If possible, I'd say play with open hands. It's going to make things better for everybody, unless hidden information is really important. And on the hands part, consider pre-drawing all the hands for the people that you're demoing with. Maybe you have everybody have preset cards. And if you're doing that, make sure you note down what those cards are. So when you accidentally shuffle the deck because you've been demoing for 7 hours and you just weren't thinking that you shouldn't have shuffled, that you know what those cards are. And same goes for stacking the deck. Stacking the deck so the next couple cards drawn are going to lead to an interesting interaction or create a good story is definitely worth doing. With that being said, like I said, document it, take notes, and take pictures. Take a picture of what that board setup looks like. Because you know what? Maybe your game's going to be really successful. You're a small publisher, and it's just you showing it off. But next time, you're going to have a friend with you, and they're going to be helping you show it off. Well, being able to take pictures so that your friend can set it up when you're not there, or reset the game when you're busy talking to somebody else, is going to go a long way. I would say, following up on that, something I mentioned earlier is you might be a small publisher. The way you're demoing and pitching games is going to be way different than a large publisher is, and don't be trying to replicate something that's not possible for you to do, right? If you're doing more one-on-one stuff. Next part, and this is part of what we do at Bonus Round when we're teaching games, is maybe a little bit less so for us on this first one, but teach the least amount of the rules that you need to teach them in order to get them playing as quickly as possible. If there's 5 rules that they need to know, but they only need to know 2 of them before taking the first turn, only tell them those 2. Leave the other ones out completely until they're relevant. Assuming that you're going to stay there with them, teaching the game throughout, that can be left out for later because you're going to still be there. Get them making those decisions as quickly as possible, because if it is a strategy game, especially that you're showing off, and you've rattled off a lot of rules, the likelihood that they're going to start going into brain drain mode and have a hard time making a decision is a lot higher than if you had just told them 1 or 2 of the rules and they're processing less. How do I pre-stack for a dice game? That's a good question. Let me do this last little bit, and I can kind of talk about that a little bit at least. All right. And then last up is don't cheat strategy. This seems counterproductive, but it goes a really long way, at least for how we teach at the cafe. It might not be as relevant for you at a convention or especially a consumer-facing show, but I think it's still important, is don't teach strategy. In some ways, you're taking away the opportunity for people to explore what's cool about your game when you're telling them all the strategy beats, and making decisions for them. Part of them making their own decisions is also part of them remembering and processing the game and committing it to their own memory. Whereas if you're playing on their behalf, they're a lot less likely to actually remember anything they did because they weren't the one doing it. You were, right? And that also goes into talking about fringe cases in the rules. If there's a rule that comes up 1 out of every 50 games and it isn't relevant in the other 49, please do not tell them that rule. It is not relevant whatsoever to you demoing here. And definitely don't set up the board state in a way that this one fringe case rule that you really are interested in is going to matter, because it's unlikely that they're going to matter because they don't, or that they're going to care because they don't have the context of those other 49 cases where it never comes up. So I definitely recommend not teaching the strategy. Tell them the rules. And that's what we always say at Bonus Round, is somebody will ask us a strategy question and I will tell them, you know what? I don't teach strategy. I just teach the rules. I want you to be able to figure out how to play. And people usually look at me and they respond, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And they're happy for it. And they're grateful that we put that thought into things. Pre-stacking for a dice game, just have the dice already showing the faces that you want, and you can set it out on the table. I know I kind of do that when I'm teaching a game like King of Tokyo or something. It might kind of depend on what the dice game is. If it's like a roll and write game, having the dice pre-rolled so that you can just select, what different actions you're going to be able to perform with each dice or something like that. I would say if the actual act of rolling the dice is, just leave them pre-rolled. Depending on how much rules are involved, though, you might not need to. So I probably have time for a Q&A here. I'm going to leave my email up here for a second, then I'll probably switch over to my camera so it's a little bit more personable. Thanks for bearing with me on the technical things. Apparently it wasn't possible for me to screen share my camera and the slideshow at the same time, which is a little bit challenging. So I have time for more questions. I also have a few things that I probably want to talk about myself, as far as teaching and demoing and whatnot goes. It would be nice to have like a video pre-recorded of me teaching and pitching a couple games. But if that's something you're interested in, if you have some of your games and you want to see how somebody might do it, especially in a setting like ours, I can definitely have myself or some of my staff even record a video for you, and do it, assuming that we have it on our shelf. That being said, feel free to reach out to us, email us if you have any questions. This email goes to myself as well as my business partner, Courtney, who some of you might know. And just, hello at Bonus Round Game Cafe. We're over in Chicago, and we're always here to do things. So I'm going to switch over to the camera, switch off of the screen share as we get stuck in time and space here. Stop sharing. There we go. Much better. Hopefully this was a little bit helpful to people. And I would definitely be interested to hear any questions that folks might have on best practices for teaching. I think a lot of this was more about less of the specifics of how to teach your specific game, and each game is going to be a little bit different. That was actually something I meant to include on the slides and I must have left out, was honestly, I would say most games have one of 3 different families that they fall into when you're talking about actually teaching the rules of your game, right? And I definitely should have focused on this. This is part of how we teach stuff, how we teach how to teach staff games at the cafe, right? How we show them how to teach stuff. So most games fall into one of 3 different families for how they're taught. A lot of party games and social games, the best way is to just play through a round. And that is very rarely the case for many other longer games. Is a game like Just One or Codenames or Wits and Wagers. All those just come to mind because we do this a lot with them. Dixit as well. I did that a bunch of times this last weekend. Is just playing through a quick round. The 30 seconds or the minute it's going to take you to play a round
is actually going to be shorter than 5 minutes of you talking about the rules, because they're kind of, a lot of those party games are kind of abstract until you start playing them, right? So that's just play through round. Next one is starting at the beginning and working your way forward, which surprisingly is not usually the case for most games, especially strategy games. The rule book is written in a start at the beginning and end at the end way, but that is not usually the way people learn games. And the way that really works in most cases is start at the end, give them context for what you're about to tell them, and then work your way backwards. And the nice part about doing that, where you start at the end and work your way back, is that where you end is where they're going to start. The very last thing you're telling them is the very first thing they're going to do. So as soon as you're done talking, they know exactly what they need to do because it was the thing that you were just saying to them. Whereas if you start at the beginning of, hey, this is what you can do on your turn, but then you're still talking for another 5 minutes, by the time you're done talking, they have to go, wait, what were the things I could do on my turn? And you're finding that you need to repeat yourself, and you're kind of spending more time than you need to. So usually starting at the end, giving context, and then end at the beginning, I find works best, right? We got a couple more minutes if anybody does have questions, but otherwise I'll just say thanks for chiming in and everything, and taking a sip of my coffee here. I know this was probably, for a lot of people, if you've been doing this for a while, it's probably information you already know or things you've already thought about, but hopefully some of it helped reinforce things or made you consider things in a way that you hadn't already. Oh, yeah. Is it possible to make a verbal comment? I don't think so with this setup. I don't know that I have the tech for it. But you can reach out to me directly and we can definitely chat. Yeah. If there is a way, I'm not sure on it. I'm not as familiar with it. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Courtney's in here, my business partner. I would say, why don't we can easily go to a kind of the networking hub after this. I forget that we have this fancy schmancy technology in front of us here. I think they have comments disabled for presentations. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to probably hop out so that the next person can start getting ready for their presentation. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully it was helpful. We kind of put this together a little bit last minute, but I'm glad that I had the opportunity to talk kind of a retailer to publisher for a little bit and kind of talk about how we see things from our side of the industry, I guess, is what I was looking for. I was looking for a clever word. Anyways, thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, Drew Lovell from Bonus Round Cafe. If you would like to talk further, I'll be hopping into the networking hub. But also, if you ever want to reach out and email us, it is hello@bonusroundcafe.com. We're over in Chicago. And hope the rest of the show goes well for y'all. Cheers.